This is the game that started it all. Well, technically speaking, this is, but that's fucking boring. So this is the game that started it all. I'm sure you've never heard of it, but this is Ocarina of Time, the very first 3D Zelda game ever made. This is the holy grail of Zelda. If you grew up in the 90s, you probably had at least 3 Charizard cards, a dope-ass Pog collection, and an N64 with The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. This game has had fans and critics alike going absolutely apeshit over it for decades now, but the question is it really that good, or is it all just nostalgia? As the internet's foremost pasta-themed Zelda expert, I believe I can answer this question. I actually didn't play Ocarina of Time until I was a teenager, so the childhood nostalgia factor is out the window. You bet your ass I owned an N64 back when I still wore pull-ups, but all I had for it was Star Fox and Wave Race. It wasn't until years later, like 2009, that I actually first played the Ocarina of Time. I of course played it again when it released on the 3DS, but that is the extent of my time with the game. It's been an entire decade since I last played what is considered to be the best Zelda game ever made, and now that we're 10 episodes deep into my Zelda series, I figured the moment was right to revisit Ocarina of Time a whole decade later. This is Link, and he's having a nightmare about this guy. This guy is Ganondorf. He's evil.
Come here, you little shit.
Wait, no, wait.
Surprise!
Yeah, this guy sucks. He also has a huge nose, is the only male to be born into the Gerudo tribe in the last 100 years, and he's obsessed with power. I mean, who isn't? Look at her. She's great. He shows Link his sick palm tattoo, and we change to a scene of the great Deku tree sending a fairy off to find the Child of Destiny and get his lazy ass out of bed. This is Navi, also known as the annoying piece of shit fairy that doesn't know when to interject or not. As you've probably heard, Navi is notorious for her and started the whole trend of sidekicks telling you shit you already know. Anyway, she wakes up Link and tells him to head over to the great Deku tree, so we leave our sweet Tree Fort bachelor pad and start our adventure in the Kokiri Forest. We whip our skate out and do some sick fucking tricks around the village. We meet Saria, our BFF, Mito, the town bully, who won't let us through the path we need, throw some rocks, go for a dip, and make our way through this mini maze to pick up the Kokiri sword. We stop at the Kokiri shop, pick on this kid for being short, and grab the Deku shield. Strapped up, we tell Mito to fuck off and head over to meet Link's dad, the Deku tree. The Great Deku Tree explains that evil is returning to the world and he's been cursed. The only one who can help now is a 10-year-old child who grew up in the bushes, where I assume they have no formal education or parental guidance aside from a giant talking sequoia tree. Yeah, screw it, he'll be fine. Miyamoto, the creator of Legend of Zelda, once stated that he created the series based on his childhood, playing in the forests where he grew up. The opening in Kokiri Forest 100% feels like a child's imagination running wild. It's all fun and games until we enter the Deku Tree and things get a little more serious. This change of tone not only sets up your expectations for the coming adventure, but also parallels the game's overall theming and feel. I also want to point out how well Inside the Deku Tree teaches you the game. We're taught lessons like observing your environment for clues, and that obvious pathways can be opened with the correct tools. Solving puzzles opens doorways, shooting out of the ordinary things like switches and ladders can open the way forward, and we're even subtly taught to listen to NPC dialogue for clues. They also show us that some puzzles require out-of-the-box thinking. For example, right when we enter the dungeon, Navi's all like, "Hey!" and gets us to enter first-person view and look down this webbed-up hole in the ground. Through the hole, we see more of the dungeon. A bit later, we learn from a Deku scrub that we can jump off high objects, and he even says if we're feeling bold to try it. And then when things seem like a dead end, if you think long enough about it, you put 2 and 2 together and realize to reach the lower dungeon, we have to jump off the ledge into the webs and bust through.
Hannibal busted through!
On top of this, we later learn that we can light sticks on fire and burn webs and are presented with another web hole, but this time we have no ledge to jump off of. But with how well the dungeon has gotten you to utilize different abilities and items, you eventually figure out that you can roll with a lit stick, burn the webs, and continue. This dungeon brilliantly breadcrumbs you towards the solution, but leaves just enough room for you to use your own ideas to progress. It also all comes full circle, and we reutilize that lesson Navi taught us at the start. We look up to the ceiling in the boss room, and we trigger the final battle with Goma. Even this boss is a perfect introduction to how boss battles work. It's just a brilliant dungeon through and through. Everything taught to you here carries forward to the rest of the adventure, and it's all done without any tutorials or how-to pop-ups. Anyways, we were too slow and Link's dad dies from the curse, but not before giving us a shiny green rock and directing us to head to Hyrule Castle. Heading back into Kokiri Village, we speak with Mito, who blames us for letting the Deku tree die and then just storms off into thin air somehow. And on the way out of the forest, Saria appears out of thin air somehow and gives us an ocarina. Seriously, what's up with these bush children phasing in and out of comprehensible space? Are they ghosts? I think they're all ghosts. Anyways, with our new ocarina in hand, we set out into the world. It was time for the ultimate adventure. But I ended up getting distracted trying to play Sandstorm on my ocarina, and then night fell and the fun adventure music stopped, so I fought some skeletons to kill time until the sun came up, and then it was time for the ultimate adventure. This is where the game allows you to play in 4K. It's only enabled in Hyrule Field, and it's kind of just a bunch of fancy grass, but hey, they were somewhat limited with the N64, so I can't blame them for trying. Besides, we're not here for fancy grass. We're heading to Castletown. As a kid that grew up in the bushes, Castletown is pretty impressive. It's got this lady doing whatever this is, and this guy doing whatever this is, and I think this guy just robbed someone? I don't know, it's not clear. We have a quick chat with Malon, who deserves all the head pats, and we head out to infiltrate Hyrule Castle. Turns out these royal guards are absolutely awful at their job, so we just zipped right past, took a little dip, and found the estranged Mario brother Talon, asleep and in our way. I accidentally got caught by the guards trying to figure out what to do to get Talon to move, but luckily that's exactly what we needed. Getting booted out back at the entrance, I hear singing, investigate, and find Malon, who asks me to find her dad and bestows upon me a gift.
Egg.
Weird egg. Weird egg. You got a weird egg. You got a weird egg. It's a weird egg. You got a weird egg. Weird egg. You got a weird egg.
Okay.
On our way back to Not Mario, the egg hatches, we use it to wake him up, push some crates around, and finally enter the castle. One Metal Gear Solid segment later, and we enter the castle courtyard. It's here that we meet Princess Zelda for the first time, and Link gets an ID on the scary dude from his nightmare. Spying through a window into the king's hall, we see Ganondorf and his big-ass nose kneeling to the king. Obviously up to some no-good shaboingery.
I'm tired of this.
Anyways, time is of the essence. It's off to Kakariko Village to save the world and to collect more of these shiny rocks. Immediately, I get distracted by chickens. Navi interrupts me, trying to get me to go talk to Saria. Ugh, Navi, shut the fuck up. This lady's chickens are missing. Do you not understand how dire the situation is? 15 minutes of collecting chickens later, the chicken lady rewards us with a jar, which I immediately filled with cucumbers, garlic cloves, mustard seed, peppercorns, dill, white vinegar, a bit of sugar, and just a pinch of salt. So shut up, Navi. Chicken hunting was not a waste of time, and in a month or two, we'll have some pickles. Back on task, we head to chat with this guard who makes fun of us for being a child and growing up in the bushes with no education, but he lets me up the mountain path anyways after I show him a letter that Zelda gave me. He mockingly calls me Mr. Hero, and I decide that I don't have to save everyone in Hyrule and go to head up the mountain. But just before I leave, the guard told me I should probably grab a metal shield for some protection from the heat of the volcano, which I decide was a good idea since my dad was a tree and he's an adult that knows how to read. So I head back to Castletown quick, tackle the toughest boss battle in the game, and purchase myself one shiny new Hylian shield.
Hey man, are you okay, bro?
Finally heading up the mountain, we reach the Goron village, learning that the chief is mega depressed and has locked himself in his room. However, we do get a hint that he loves dancing to the music of the forest. Obviously, we're meant to go visit Saria, since she gave us our ocarina in the first place. I'm pretty pleased that I was able to figure that one out all by myself with no help from anyone whatsoever. Anyways, we swing by the ranch and visit Malon to learn Epona's song, become best friends with a horse, explore the whole ass forest, fight a furry, meet up with Saria, and learn Saria's song. We head back to Goron City, cure Darunia's depression, and watch him do his funny dance. We are now able to pick up bombs, and we are able to enter Dodongo's Cavern. Dodongo's Cavern is another fantastic dungeon that rewards clever thinking and paying attention to your surroundings. It's got cool Lizalfos battles and a very fun boss fight in which my big metal shield came in super handy. So, shout out to the Mountain Path Guard. After saving the Gorons, I'm accepted into the Goron Brotherhood, given a shiny red stone, told about a fairy on the mountaintop, find a cow instead, play it some smooth jazz, and acquire some milk.
The milk I'm about to drink is the world's cleanest milk.
Oh yeah, That's some good milk.
Next up, we head over to the Zora's domain. Along the way, I spotted a heart container, f***ed around with a chicken for like 30 minutes, accidentally angered the wrath of God, and had my first death of the game. And after struggling with the chicken to do what I wanted, I finally got the heart piece I was after and sent the chicken on its way. Entering the Zora's domain, we say hi to the king who was brooding over his missing daughter, did some diving, acquired a Zora scale, and learned an important lesson about trying new things. I typically would have skipped what I thought was an unnecessary diving minigame, but I ended up giving it a shot and was rewarded with an item needed for progression. This was a common trend throughout the whole game. There wasn't a single point where I went out of my way to try something or figure out a puzzle and wasn't rewarded with something useful. So with the Zora scale, we headed up to Lake Hylia, found a bottle with a note inside, immediately forgot there was a note inside, ran around until my Twitch chat reminded me there was a note inside, read the note inside, went back to the Zora King and showed him the note inside, and then was asked to go save his daughter who was stuck inside Jabu-Jabu. What is that, some kind of soup? Despite the situation sounding quite urgent, the king took 800 years to move his fat ass out of the way.
One eternity later.
And then finally we were able to reach Jabu-Jabu at the Zora's fountain. Some big old fish the Zoras worship, or something. I don't know, man, I'm more partial to worshipping our Lord and Savior Chef Boyardee, but you do you, Zoras. Despite last playing this game 11 years ago, I remembered you needed a fish to get Jabu-Jabu to open his mouth up, and being the genius that I am, I remembered there was a nearby hole with a fish inside. So I went and scooped it up, named him George, sacrificed him to Jabu-Jabu, and got sucked up along with him. And here we are, dungeon number 3. Jabu-Jabu's belly. The first 2 dungeons being absolute bangers kind of left dungeon number 3 feeling a little bit underwhelming. It's not bad, but it is definitely the weakest of the 3 so far. It's mostly just annoying because of all the... And you also have to carry the Zora Princess, which is a little annoying until you figure out how it all works. But in the end, the dungeon is pretty easy to figure out. Once completed, we acquire a blue shiny rock, apparently a fiance, explore the Zora's fountain a bit, and admire this tree.
That's a nice tree.
I also found my first fairy fountain, and then failed to realize you have to play Zelda's Lullaby to summon said fairy, and instead caught an Uber ride with this big owl man back to Castletown. It's here where Link's nightmare from the beginning becomes reality. Zelda and her retainer Impa flee Hyrule Castle with Ganondorf following closely behind. Ganondorf appears from the gates with his freakishly long nose. There we go, that's better. And then assaults Link and heads off into the night. I like this a lot. Ganondorf's all like,
What you gonna do, you little shit? I'm on a horse.
and then speeds off unknowing that Link's about to have the biggest glow up of the century. During all of this, Zelda tossed the titular Ocarina of Time into the water for us to collect, and we learned the song that will change everything. Wait, this is Zelda's ocarina, which means she had her lips on it. If I use it, that'll be an indirect kiss. Rav, stop with the cringy weeb shit. It was time to toot my flute and become a man. But before that, Navi reminded me that I never went to the ferry on Death Mountain, so a perilous journey, another glass of milk, and one visit with a great fairy later.
Lady, you're scaring us.
We acquired the spin attack, a crucial part of Link's moveset. Alright, I admit it. That was a pretty useful hint, Navi. I also made a quick pit stop to visit the fairy I missed in the Zora's Fountain and acquire Farore's Wind, a handy item that lets you set a warp point that I will probably forget to ever use. Okay, time for manhood. This part's really cool. When Link pulls out the Master Sword, he gets sealed away for 7 whole years.